Focus, we can do this. Hello there, my name is Mackenzie, welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for being here. Today we are doing my March wrap-up. I'm very excited for this. I actually have the numbers, Mason. I have the numbers. Now, even though I didn't read as many pages as I would like to, I'm still very happy with my 3,758 pages read, 11 books finished, 2 books DNF'd. I did 1 audiobook and 10 physical books. The rating spread is also very nice. We have between 5 stars and 3.5 stars. So we're gonna start with the books that I DNF'd and then work our way up to the 5 stars so that way we can end on a more positive note. The 2 books I DNF'd this month I read for a vlog-based kind of video where I was trying audiobook recommendations from my favorite YouTubers. The first one was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So because I listened to this on audio, I don't have a physical copy to show you. I'll put a picture here. So Pet Sematary is about a family a mom, a dad, and a daughter and a son, and they move into this new town, and they have this land, and this land has this weird curvy road on it, and it also has a pet cemetery in the back. And one of the family members dies, and the father is so grief-stricken, paranormal activity takes place. I think that's as vague as I can get without doing too much spoilers. Now, I watched the newer version of Pet Sematary. I understand what happens in kind of the vaguest sense. I understand also that books are different than movies, and that's why I wanted to go into this book, see what was different, see what was different, see what was the same, and really I was excited to see Stephen King do grief. You know, I have seen a bunch of reviews talk about how even though Stephen King being the king of horror and this is kind of horrific in a sense, it really has a lot to do with grief and family relationships and the familial unit and what someone is willing to go through and the lengths they're willing to go through for their loved ones. And that's great. That is a premise I can get behind. It was something that I believed that I could kind of forgive some other misgivings for that I've had with him in the past. However, when the whole book is supposed to be based on him having grief over a lost family member, he needs to actually act like he likes those family members. He needs to, and the first, I think I read the first couple of chapters for this book, but I also understand that this was written in the 80s, but there is talk of child abuse, talk of how he wants to abandon his family on the side of the road, talk about how he just simply finds his female child irritating and his wife is stupid. So I mean, do I really feel bad if any/all of those characters die? Not really, because he didn't care about them anyway. And I think this is kind of a theme in Stephen King's writing, where it's man who is supposed to be put into a horrible situation, but I don't believe the horrible situation changes him because that man is the way he is. He doesn't like his family, he's abusive, he's not nice, and this goes for Pet Sematary and The Shining. So the 2 Stephen King books that I read that are supposed to be pretty different are almost the exact same in the premise and setup and the way the familial relationships go. So that wasn't for me, actually. And I didn't necessarily mind in The Shining that Stephen King's main character, Jack, was, not the best family man, because he was supposed to want to kill his family at the end anyway. But in Pet Sematary, the father's supposed to be grief-stricken when one of his family members dies. And I just could not believe that. That was a DNF for sure. And it's funny too, because I feel like if I didn't know the ending. If I didn't know what was going to happen in the book, I probably could have kept going. Because it wasn't like it was that bad. It was just like, oh, character, and he's unlikable. Cool. I could read it. I can read an unlikable character, but if I'm supposed to have empathy for him later on in the novel, it's not going to work. The next book that I DNF'd was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Here's a picture. Daisy Jones and the Six, as I understand it, is a tell-all of a band, a fake band, written by a fake author, and it's kind of just a compilement of like interviews and first-person experiences and all that kind of jazz. So this book, I only DNF'd because I feel like I shouldn't be listening to the audio for it. And here's why. The audio has a full cast of narrators. Daisy Jones has a narrator, all of the interviewers have a narrator, the people that she interviews has a narrator, and so you get this super emotional, in-depth kind of tell-all of the band Daisy Jones and the Six. But it starts with Daisy Jones as a child seeking attention from older men. And while that is a reality, and while that was a reality and continues to be a reality in the music industry, it's something that broke my heart to hear an actor tell me about. I already have my sensitivity issues with sexual assault and reading. And while this wasn't graphic or on page, it was something that like tore me down and I started to cry. So I was like, this is probably something that I shouldn't be putting myself through, maybe at all. I do, however, think that I could possibly continue reading on in the physical copy because I don't have to hear someone break down as they're telling me this, but, you know, that was me. So definitely not a DNF out of hatred or spite or anything that I didn't like. It was just very emotional for me, and I couldn't make it, okay? Alright, so next we're moving into 3.5 stars. I have 5 books in this category, okay? And we're going to go in the order in which I read them. So for the 3.5 stars, we'll start with these 2 because they are the ending of a series and I don't want to give too many spoilers for it. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, we have the Battle of the Labyrinth, and we have The Last Olympian. So this was a reread I was doing because I was totally in a slump after February's reading, and I really just wanted to remind myself what I liked about reading. So let's see, what can I tell you about these 2 as a summary? So Percy Jackson is a demigod, and he goes to Camp Half-Blood, and as soon as he realizes that he is a demigod and starts going to Camp Half-Blood, things start happening. A major prophecy has been spoken and everyone thinks it's about him, and he has to basically go off and protect Mount Olympus and protect the gods on Mount Olympus from Titans? I think I can say from Titans without it giving away too much. Okay, so each of these has its own little like plot narrative. Cool things about these 2 in the series is that they kind of stop following the cookie cutter formula that Rick Riordan had started with the first 3 books, which is cool. I really enjoyed these books, and they got 3.5 stars because of the romance that was being written about them. There's this awful, it is the worst. It's probably the worst love triangle I've ever read. I mean, aside from Twilight was awful, but I mean, at least Bella made a choice. It takes so much page time. So much page time. If it didn't take that much page time, it wouldn't have been that bad, and these probably would have been 4 stars. But the amount of page time that we dedicate to these 2 girls hating each other because they both like Percy, or to Percy getting mad at one of the girls because they're not nice, like, I can't with trash love triangles. It is horrible. And it was funny too because after I read The Olympians, I was going to continue on with the 2nd series of Percy Jackson, but after this love triangle, I need a minute. Maybe more. My next 3.5 star coincidentally is also a Greek mythology. It's Lore by Alexandra Bracken. So this is my edition from, oh god, is it Fairy Loot? It is Fairy Loot. Oops, my little letter's coming out. So this is my edition from Fairy Loot. I absolutely love it. Okay? Lore is about a girl named Lore, and she comes from this group of families, and they have been chosen by Zeus to hunt gods. So a long time ago, 7 gods tried to overthrow Zeus, and they failed. And so as punishment, every 7 years for 7 days, the gods come down to Earth, and they are hunted by some of these families. And whoever kills a god gets their power. So this was a really cool story in the sense that we have this super awesome, knows how to fight, struggling with trying to get out of this cult-like situation. It's a very interesting story. It really is. I feel like once you know what's happening and what has happened, it's great and it's amazing. But for so much, I would say the first half of this book is all the author trying to make the reader confused. You know? There are opportunities for explanation from the characters, and instead of giving explanation, they purposefully create mystery. And that's something that was very frustrating for me, because I do like when the reader is kept in mystery, but this was done so... I don't want to say bad, but it was just mediocre. It was just average. It wasn't great. I saw what was happening. If you want me to be kept in mystery, you have to mystify me. You have to make me believe that I'm not left in mystery. You have to distract me. You have to use magician's tricks to make me feel like something else is happening, or else for half of this book, all I was caught up on was okay, here's my list of questions, let's wait until the author decides to give me answers, because the questions were brought up, and the author said, no, we're not going to answer that right now. I'm not going to say anything else, but we're just not going to answer it right now, and we're going to move on to another boring scene. It was frustrating in that sense that the pacing was just not on time with what the rest of the book was doing. Really ruined it, because when I think back to what happens in the book and the plot points, I'm yeah, those are good, those are cool. And then I'm wait, I didn't know any of it until the last 100 pages. And it's at that point, do I care that much about those mysteries? Not really. So I had fun, but it was really just a 3.5 star there. My next 3.5 star is Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. I was really excited to read this book because it was on my radar from January. So this is a 2021 release. So this follows Hessa, who is an Engi, and she has power bestowed upon her from her goddess. It's called her fire. She can basically turn men's bones to dust. That's the tagline, even though I don't think she ever does that in this book. It's the first line here. Hessa is an Engi, a battle-hardened priestess of the goddess of war, with the power to turn an enemy's bones to dust with a scream. And she never does that. Not once. I mean, that has nothing to do with why I've rated it the way I rated it, but she never does that. In case you were waiting for that to happen, it doesn't happen. So, I mean, I don't know, spoiler warning, I guess, for that, but I feel like I'm just kind of saving you a moment. Yeah, so Hessa is a warrior priestess of the goddess of war, and while she is away atoning for some sins, she comes back to her village to find it absolutely destroyed, believing herself to be the last Engi, the last warrior priestess of this goddess. And so she goes throughout this whole book trying to atone for the sin that she did, also trying to figure out why her goddess isn't available to help her people. It's hard to tell you the plot of this book because it's not, as much as we follow the character of Hessa, the important part is not the characters. It's the world. We're being told about the world a lot. A lot. I didn't hate it. I prefer a balanced book, as opposed to one that is heavy one way or the other in character or world. It made it kind of difficult for me to just sit and read it. I got some pretty good, like, chunks read, like, in an hour or so, but I consistently wanted to get up from this book. There are a slew of new gods that Hessa already knows about, and so it's not like she's giving us a lot of detail about those things, so every time one god's name is brought up, I'm like, okay, who are you? Thank goodness. In the back, I was gonna have a heart attack after like the first 50 pages, but in the back there is a glossary of names for like the regular people and then like the gods as well. So there's a map and a glossary, and you need both, dude. You need both. The world is very interesting. Like I said, the slew of gods are interesting. There's new gods, there's old gods, and Hessa is kind of thrown in the middle of the battle between all of them. And it is really interesting to see the world kind of change. We are witnessing the world change as the gods go to war. And it was very interesting. And as soon as I started getting to like the last, I don't know, I would say like the last 200 pages really held me. They really held me. Like this last chunk had me. But everything up until then, it was like Hessa either knows so much about those gods that she isn't telling us about them, or she knows nothing about those gods and so we in turn know nothing. There is a lot of like, not necessarily I guess political intrigue, because this world is very based on gods, and like, man, it feels cult-like. I feel like a lot of the books I read this month are very cult-ish, and like, I don't know. It was something that kept pulling me out of it, because I'm like, I think Hessa's in a cult. And like, I wasn't sure if the author knew she was doing that on purpose or not. I just wasn't sure. Because not only did Hessa feel like she was in a cult, but so did everyone else who was following a god. Even though these gods have like physical forms, it still felt very cult-like. I don't know. It was strange, and I wasn't sure where the tone was supposed to fall on that, as if like, are we supposed to believe that Hessa's in a cult and we want her to get out, or are we not, because you're not making it clear. My next 3.5 star is actually the last book that I finished this month, Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This follows, what's her name? Alina Starkov. So this follows Alina. She is an orphan. She has a friend. She's in the first army of this magical world, and when she crosses this dark place, the Unsea, she finds out that she has power that she didn't realize that she had. And then it gets taken away from her friend and her army, and becomes a Grisha, who in this universe is kind of like, they tried to tell me that the Grisha manipulate small sciences, and they tried to explain to me that like, when they create fire, like the Grisha who create fire, they pull like combustible elements towards them, and then they still need a flint to light them. That's fine for that one. But then they didn't bother to tell me how the healer's magic works. And I'm like, okay, is this supposed to be magic, which I'll take, or is this supposed to be science? Because if this is supposed to be science, I need like more of that. I need you to explain it more, because I don't believe you. This was actually really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a little bit tropey, but I was having fun. And the trope that really brought this from a 4 star to a 3.5 star was this childhood friend BS, okay? I am not a fan of, okay, spoiler warning, okay? Spoiler warning. And it's a spoiler warning for a trope that is in the book. So if you don't want to know what trope is in the book, please skip ahead. This is the reason why I gave it a 3.5. There's really nothing much else to say. But I did enjoy it, so skip ahead. I do not like, at all, ever once, the trope of the childhood best friend who has no romantic interest in the main character at all until said main character goes off and has romantic interest feelings for someone else. I don't care. I don't care. Because, I mean, the backpedaling that the author has to do and the excuses for the way that the main character is treated, or the way that the childhood best friend, like, goes off and has sex with everyone, like, why? Why? If you want them to be together, make it seem like in the beginning when they are in the same army, make it seem like he actually likes her. In the first 2 chapters, the best friend character sees someone, flirts with them twice, and then goes off to try and have sex with someone else, while telling the main character, hey, I'm gonna go and try off to have sex with someone else. Glad I got to see you tonight, though. And then he shows up again and he's like, I'm in love with you. No, you're not. You're jealous. So that trope is just, it takes place at the beginning and it takes place at the end. And so the middle was juicy and delightful and I loved it. There's a lot of intrigue and I liked the court scenes and I like how this political intrigue and the Grisha and they kind of have to manipulate each other. I really enjoyed all that. But that trope that happens at the beginning and then at the end really bookends it with some sour notes that are just like, wow, is this gonna continue? I hope not. Now for 4 stars. The first 4-star we're going to talk about is the first book that I finished this month. It is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is her memoir. This was such a sweet little book. So basically it follows Michelle Obama. She talks about her childhood growing up and then all the way up until Barack Obama leaves office. So it talks about her life before Barack, during their marriage and trying to have kids and trying to be 2 people in a marriage in a unit. And it was really, really sweet. I really enjoyed the conversations on being enough for yourself and being happy in your life, finding purpose in your life, not just in your job. I really enjoyed the conversations on marriage and love and belonging to a family unit and what that looks like and how it can look different for other people. I loved the conversation on being a genuine human being, on being just being who you are and not faking the funk and just being okay with it. It was such a sweet, such a calm time. Like, it really felt like I was getting motherly advice from Michelle Obama, and I mean, how could you hate that? The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. First of all, I love my edition. It has like, it's paperback, but it has this like, I don't know, like crumpled paper, crumpled cardstock kind of feel to it, and I love it. So Ziamora lives in Harlem with her twin and her parents, and she feels unheard. She feels like she can't be herself. She feels just put in too small of a box, and her parents don't understand her, and she doesn't know how to really communicate. She does a lot of poetry, and her English teacher finds out and introduces her into slam poetry, and it's about her kind of coming to terms with who she is, standing up for who she is, and asserting herself in her family unit as a child, which is something that is so important. And honestly, I really could have used this book when I was in high school, so I can only imagine how other teenagers feel about it now. It is so immensely difficult to be a misunderstood teenager in your own home and feel like you cannot communicate who you are or what you need to your family unit. Very amazing, very beautiful, very heartbreaking, very sweet. I absolutely adored it. There is a little bit of a romance in here, and it was just the cutest little thing on top. I did enjoy it. Very good. Amazing. The next 4-star was an audiobook called Pride by E.B. Zaboy. It was narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is why I was really interested in it. It has such a lyrical feel. So Poet X, where it was all poems telling the story. Pride has more of just like a poetic prose, and then like after every chapter or every couple chapters, there's a little bit of a poem there. It's very good. So Pride is a Pride and Prejudice kind of remix. It takes place in contemporary Bushwick, which is being gentrified. Basically, a rich black family moves into this poor black neighborhood, and Pride and Prejudice ensues. I mean, it's funny because they really just could have called it Pride and Prejudice as well, because those are the things that are happening. They both have such immense pride and prejudice towards each other, viewing each other as you're too rich or you just don't understand. And it's really beautiful. It really is. You know, I wasn't sure if I was going to like this kind of retelling. I do often like retellings. I just wasn't sure if I was going to like this kind of retelling. But man, oh man, was it beautiful. It talks a lot about change, really, about children learning to accept change, or because our main character, what is her name, Zizi? I don't have the book with me, so I forget her name, but our main character doesn't want anything to change. She's gonna be a senior next year, and she's either going to be a senior next year, or she is a senior, and she's gonna be moving on to college, and her sister is already in college, but even though those things are happening, she doesn't want other things to change. She doesn't want her sister to get in a relationship. She doesn't want to be in a relationship. She doesn't want her sister to not move back. Her sister wants to start traveling. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want to go far away for college. She doesn't want to leave Bushwick. She doesn't really want any kind of change. And again, another book I could have used as a teenager, because my whole childhood was about watching things change and holding on to it, white knuckling anything I could to make sure that it couldn't change. And I feel like that was all this book was about this one girl learning that change is okay, it is part of life, and it is a good thing. It can bring good things. Oh man, it was lovely, honestly. It was so good, and it's just perfect. It's just perfect, really. I mean, it's funny because it hit all the notes of Pride. Pride hit all the notes of Pride and Prejudice. All the good plot points, all the important characters were there. They just kind of made it better, you know? I mean, it just kind of expanded, and it felt real, you know? And even the Mr. Collins character isn't as horrible as he is in the book. And it's perfect. Loved it. My next 4-star is The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. This is a poetry book. It has a lot to do with a princess saving herself from various dragons. Those dragons being family members or ex-boyfriends. Well, I don't want to say ex-boyfriends. I'll say ex-lovers, because we're not entirely sure. So lovely, so needed, so important. My mother smiled as she offered a cube of sugar in her upturned palm. Greedily, I accepted. I reached inside my mouth, delicately placing one, just one, on the center of my tongue, and I clamped down. Salt. That is what abuse is. Knowing you are going to get salt, but still hoping for sugar for 19 years. The next 4-star book that I want to talk about, it is the last one, is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. So this book is told in 4 perspectives. I love this artwork. I just do. It's so cute and love it. So, it is told in 4 varying perspectives of the 4 main characters, but it is kind of presented as if there is one main character, and that one main character is very milquetoast. She's not my favorite. However, everyone else is great. So, Our milquetoast character is half fae, half human. She wants to be part of the fae world, and so she's basically on this like probationary period to see if she can get citizenship into this world. As that's happening, people are dying. Half human, half fairy people are dying. They're being murdered. And she is not only worried because she's half human, half fairy, but also concerned because no one else in the fairy government is seeming to care because they're not full fairies. There's no real reason for our milquetoast character to be involved aside from she is. And that's a little bothersome to me, but everyone else is more thoroughly involved. We have this character, God, what is her name? So we have this character, Noaska, who is kind of our badass chick. She likes to fight. She basically is our chaos-causing character who stumbles upon these, like, murders and is like, well, what's happening here? And at first it seems like she's just gonna, like, figure out what's happening and then possibly get in on it because she is chaos causing. And then once she meets our milquetoast character, she kind of falls in love and she's like, maybe I will be a good guy if you'll be a good guy. And then there are also two other guys who are, I don't want to say what their motives are because I feel like that's more spoilery. But they're there and they're important, and they're also, they bring along a lot more mystery. They bring the political intrigue from their side, because our milquetoast character is, while she's half fairy side comes from the king, she's like not important at all. She knows nothing. She barely knows anything about like fairy politics. So anything you learn about fairy politics comes from the two guys. So it is a little bit frustrating, and is one of the main reasons why this book got a 4 and not a 5, was the milquetoast character. What are you doing? Where's your motive? Why don't you care? What are you doing? What do you bring to this story? Because she doesn't bring the political intrigue. You'd think that the king's relative would be where all of the political intrigue comes from, but nay, for some reason. The adventure is amazing in this. It's really well written. I love the world building in this more than I enjoy the characters. Whenever it's the milquetoast character, it's not fun, really. She goes into the human world a lot, and you know, it's more of a contemporary setting where the fairy world lays on top of the human map, right? So fairies and humans kind of are living together, and the humans don't necessarily know that. So there's a lot of contemporary setting. There's a lot of our milquetoast character being milquetoast, and like it starts getting much more enjoyable when the milquetoast character realizes she likes Noaska, because then she's like, oh, I have a motive, I have a reason for being here. But up until that point, it's like, I don't believe you're doing any of this at all. Alright, and the last book that I want to talk about is my 1 5-star this month. Oh my god, Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is a fairy tale. And when I say that, I mean fairy tales make you think about them for always, right? Does any little girl who was shown Cinderella, do we not constantly think of Miss Cinderella? I do. I don't know. It's such a good book. Oh my god. Okay. So Cassiopeia is like a bastard daughter of this family. She's treated super poorly, and you know, it's the worst. She has horrible situation. And she has this one cousin who torments her to death. Like, it's the worst. And then she finds a chest. And she opens that chest, and that chest releases a Mayan god of death. But not just any Mayan god of death, the god of death. Well, I mean, they're all a god of death, but he's supposed to be like the king, right? Okay, and so he tells her, please help me. He tells her, your family trapped me here. Help me, and I'll help you get out. And she's like, you know what? My family sucks. I will help you, because they've basically trapped me here as well, and I kind of connect. So they go on this kind of like adventure through 20th century? No. Through like this jazz age time across Mexico. It's beautiful. The writing is amazing, okay? There was not a moment where I was like, wow, I could be there. I could be in Mexico City. I could be in Xibalba. It was amazing. The story is great. The balance is wonderful. It feels so short too. It's only like 334 pages. There is a glossary, thank goodness, because there's a lot of like Mayan folklore. I don't know if it's called Mayan folklore or Mayan mythology. So if you know for sure, let me know. But there's a lot of old Mayan beliefs in here, a lot of old Mayan names, Mayan gods. It's really so lovely, I think. Really so lovely. There's like small romance and a lot of like a lot of balance. I don't even know how to explain it to you. It was so beautifully written. Cassiopeia and her cousin are both like the gods that they're helping and the gods that they're going against. And it's really just one of those moments where you realize people aren't one thing, right? They're not always one thing. And if people can be open enough to expressing themselves with each other, you find that you have more in common than you previously thought. Or you at least find that you have more empathy for that person than previously thought. I think I read this book in like maybe the first or second week of March. I haven't stopped thinking about it, and all I want to do is reread it. It's so cute. It has this like, it's bittersweet, and why is it when a book is bittersweet, all I want to do is reread it just for the sweet parts? But I know I can't just have the sweet parts, so I'm like not rereading it because I know heartbreak is there. You guys, I could just keep gushing. This is how I know it's a 5-star. There's nothing about it that I'm upset about. I'm not even upset about the ending. And the ending is one of those things where in any book it's a divisive thing. It could be. I loved the ending. I loved the beginning. I loved the middle. I loved everything that happened. Another 5-star for me. Yay! All right. Let's get everyone together because no one's in a shape. So she's not as heavy as she typically gets, but this be heavy. 3,758 pages, my dear. 11 books finished. I love me in March. I love that for me. So good. Everyone say goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.